right, next
At all.
case.
Like-
3058, Lake Agawam Conservancy.
For you, sir.
Hi. Catherine Somo from Rue Associates, representing Lake Agawam Conservancy. Our office is located at 209 Shafter Street in Islandia. I have the affidavit of mailing and posting. So we're just looking for a modification to an existing permit that we have to match and be in line with the permit that we have with the town trustees. The permit involves removal of water lilies within Lake Agawam and installation of aerators. And what we're looking to have modified is the timing for the water lily removal. Right now, it's limited to just the fall, and when we install the aerators this spring, we want the opportunity, if there are water lilies present, to be able to remove them when we install the aerators.
Okay,
When do you want to do it?
We're installing the aerators this spring, so we just want the ability to remove water lilies when we put the aerators in.
The problem is that when you presented this to us, that you made a strong case why it's critical that you do this work in the fall, that it has the most beneficial effect to the lake to do it at that time. And then you ran into problems, I don't know, with the town or getting a contractor to do it, and now you want to do it in the spring, and you argued that the spring wasn't a great time to do it. The best time to do it was in the fall. So are you going to do it in the fall also?
We are going to do it in the fall also. We just want to be able to remove what we can in the spring so that we're able to get the aerators in. Honestly, it may be very limited what we're going to be able to remove just because of the growth that's going to occur this early in the year. We just want to be able to remove the water lilies when we're putting the aerators in, and if needed, well, the plan is with the aerators going in, it's going to reduce the amount of water lilies that are going to be present. So if we had done the removal last fall, we wouldn't have the water lily growth coming in that we would see this spring. Being that we're going to be putting it off, it should be reduced, what's going to be present this fall. But we just, like I said, we just want the ability to be able to remove water lilies in the spring.
Well, I'm sure you people have given this good thought. What problem do we have with this?
No, I just.
I'd like to ask a couple of follow-up questions. One is that when you remove the water, the original proposal that we heard was that when the water lilies would be removed, that they would actually be left to dry out in the parking lot at the end of Lake Agawam across from the Dune Church.
Right.
There will be more traffic in the spring, so where will those water lilies be drying out before they're carted away? That's one question that I have.
Okay. We had spoken to the town trustees who had laid out the area that we should put the water lily that we're moving in, and we have a time limit for when we can complete the work. It needs to be done by the end of April, before there's going to be people there, and the contractor has said that they can remove them within, they said daily, but I'm saying they could be removed within a couple weeks of when they do the work. So we have a limit on when we can use that space.
Another question that I had was, Mr. Guzowitz is perfectly correct. We heard a very strong argument that removing them in the fall was really the only appropriate time to remove them. And we had also asked, because the original request was for a 3-year opportunity to be cutting back these water lilies,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. And we had asked for a report in the following fall so that we could have an understanding of how efficacious the work was turning out to be. How will that work if you start in the spring, where you're going to have a very limited, as I'm understanding now, ability to cut back anything? When would be an appropriate time before you start all over again for us to have an understanding if it's turning out to give you the results you want?
Well, so the plan is once we put the aerators in, we'll see the radius of influence that the aerators are providing, because with the water movement, we shouldn't have the water lily growth coming in as thick as it was before. So we also need to submit a report to the town trustees similarly. So in the summer, during the peak growing season, we would go back out and map out the water lilies again, and then we would present the findings to both the town and the village and say, look, this is where we still have water lilies. And I can't speak to what we're going to need to do in the fall then. We assume that we're going to need to do another removal. It's not going to be able to get every area. Maybe we're going to need to move the aerators around. But I can't speak to what that next step is going to be. We would present our letter report, and we would be back here again.
Quite frankly, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Board, that we felt a little disrespected because in the beginning, you all, I'm not saying you particularly, came with and asked fervently that we expedite. We expedited, and then it flew or went away, and now you're here months later. That's rude. That was rude.
Well, by the timing, it was timing. By the time we got the permit, there was nothing, we couldn't remove it anymore. The contractor,
Just saying.
I mean, then we found out you didn't have a contract on board yet,
well, you know, we
so
have a contractor on board.
so now you do have a
No, we have
contractor
a
that's ready to work
contractor.
in the spring.
He's in the,
The money sorted out?
yeah,
Because
it's,
that wasn't, we were told that it was, but then we learned later that it wasn't, that there were some financial questions about whether or not you could complete the work.
that's, my understanding is that it's completely funded by the Lake Agawam Conservancy. We have a contractor on board to do the work. They're provided in the permit application that we submitted. The issue became that once we got the permit, we received a permit from the town trustees in November, and I believe we were still waiting on the village permit at that time, and then it became an issue with the contractor, because then he said, I won't do the work in December, because if the lake freezes over, I don't want to get my equipment stuck in the lake. So then that put us off.
It's freezing.
Well, I mean, I can't make him put his equipment in
No,
the
no.
lake, so then we couldn't do the work at
Okay,
that point.
well,
So now we're like, well, now what are we going to do? So now we need to put the aerators in, and put the aerators in. We don't want it to be, if there's water lilies there, it's like this cyclic thing. We don't want
You need
to,
flexibility.
we just need a little bit of flexibility. It's not going to be a massive removal. We just want to be able to do
Okay.
minor removal if needed. We may not,
Further? Anything further? Can we write a decision or verbally, or would you like to close for decision? Or would
There's
you
a
like to
couple of, there's a
submit?
couple
Yeah,
of,
just a couple of things.
Okay, sorry.
So just to go through and correct one brief statement, this board did act on October 24th, which was prior to the trustees. So it was certainly our hope that the work could have been done, and we did look to expedite it at that time. The original application from October 3rd did say that removal of the water lilies needed to be completed before the plants die back in order to disrupt the nitrogen cycle. And that's where the October control date came into effect. There was a document submitted the day of the hearing that did not have that schedule. That was dated October 24th. We were moving very quickly. We did incorporate that fall cutting and a 5-year permit, conditional permit, that included conditions for an annual report to evaluate the effectiveness of the prior year's cutting and make a determination on how it would be handled that subsequent year. So that's the permit that is looking to be amended. There was one other amendment that was requested, and that is that one of the owners at 472 First Neck Lane is not part of the application at this time. So that was also what was submitted with the application to amend the permit. So we all know the history, we all have our feelings about it. I have been working with the village as well as other parties as part of the harmful algal bloom action plan that's taking place now. There will be one adopted this spring. And as a result of those meetings, I get to contact and speak to a lot of people. So I did speak with Dr. Gobler at the last meeting. I also spoke with Ed Warner, who's still a town trustee. Eric Schultz is the president now, but Ed is on the board. The consensus was this can't really do any harm. That if organic material, if vegetation is removed during a late, let's just call it a spring control cycle, that will reduce the biomass in the lake and it will have some benefit. It was very clear that removing in October would be much more beneficial because you actually had standing material that would be removed from the lake. So I think to the issue of timing, the trustees have addressed that through their permit, which does allow this spring cutting. And also, they're probably not going to harvest a lot of material because they're not taking the roots out. They're only taking what is above the bottom or really in the lower water column. So based on that consensus, I don't think there's a real basis to just, say no to the requested amendment because, the consensus is it won't do any harm. So it is, as Catherine indicated, it provides flexibility, may do some good, and my expectation is you're still going to get quite a bit of growth because I don't think you're going to have a lot of growth by the time this control occurs, and they will look to do something in the fall, and that would be the best time to do it. And I don't know if you mentioned it, Catherine, but you talked to me before about installation of aerators, that it would be helpful to remove as much as possible to get it off the bottom before the aerators are installed, which will occur either way in the spring. So that's the basis for the request. I did examine it, as we had talked about at a prior work session before last month's meeting that was not held, and that's my input to the board. I would ask, I actually did prepare a decision for tonight, but if it's not critical in terms of timing, and it might be, but you'll have to tell us, that part of the question is, the contractors is their funding. I think we could do it tonight, but if we did it March, it would give us a chance to look over everything that I can circulate to the board prior to that next meeting. So you'll have to let us know if you think it will be done before the next meeting of this board, which is the third week of March.
That's planned to be the end of March, early April.
So,
Because we need to-
again, it's up to you, but for me, I think for David and us advising you, I'd like to just read over everything again, see that the conditions still make sense. I did make a number of modifications that reflected, things like that the trustee's permit would be issued. In fact, it has been issued, so I've updated that. I took out 472. I even updated the negative declaration because this requires a secret determination, and just a slight wording. I felt it was better to get it all.
That's fine. We don't
together.
want to interfere with your work. However, I will say that the odds are it's going to pass in March,
Okay,
if I could guess. So you could tell your people that.
okay.
But
You're not going to do it tonight?
they will.
You
No, he
can
wants
line
to
up the
dot his i's. He
contractors
wants
and
to
we'll have a-
write a
Okay.
re-
On March
Chip.
8th.
and David, perhaps. You
Yeah, if Chick would like time, that's
Chick wants some time
his
to
permit to write.
write it
so-
up
So we
nice.
close this for decision then?
Yes.
Is there a motion to do that there? Anybody from the floor have anything to say? No. Okay. Is there a motion to close for decision?
No move. Second.
All in favor? All
Aye.
right.
Thank you.
And I had that, is that March 26th? The next, that's actually the 4th.
I think it's the 26th.
Yes.
The work session would be 9 days before that.
That's right. Okay, good, thank you.
Next case. 3062 DPB, Southampton.
Eric Dantes for the applicant, 500 Crownland Lane, Cutchogue. Before I get started, one question on 71 Walnut Street. Was the pool approved on that application?
It was not.
Let me give you, in addition to the variances I already submitted, I have a 15th variance to submit, which I found later. So let me give you one.
Excuse me, okay, see you, Chick. You have another variance that you want to submit?
No, the priors. Submit another prior variance that you've approved in the past as part of my
sorry.
application. There should be 8 in here. If there's not, I have one. Thank you. Survey in the picture. Basically, 70 South Hill Street, the applicant requests a variance relief from Table 116-11C, Table of Yard Regulations, to replace an 8 by 10-foot spa with a 10 by 20-foot swimming pool. The front yard setback request is 22.4 feet from Platte Terrace, where code requires a minimum of 70. Subject lot is a pre-existing non-conforming 8,973 square foot corner lot located in the R40 zoning district. Lot runs 65 feet along South Hill Street. It's a narrow lot, 141 feet in length on Platte Terrace, and then 62.25 feet on the south side of the rear yard location. So there is no code-conforming location to put a swimming pool on this lot. And it's a corner lot burdened by 2 front yards. Basically, under the balancing test and the reasons to grant relief, the benefit to the applicant is substantial and the detriment to the village is none. There will be no detriment to the village by granting this relief. In the character of the neighborhood, the grant of the variance will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to the nearby properties. The proposed modest pool expansion will not result in any change in the character of the neighborhood. The proposed pool is an in-ground pool and will not enlarge any structures that are above grade level. The neighborhood is an older residential neighborhood that consists of single-family homes. While it's in the R40 district, the majority of the lots, I think only one of the lots actually meets the 40,000 square foot requirement in size. And South Hill Street is a private, lightly traveled street, which cars only travel to go to South Hill Street or to Platte Terrace. On Platte Terrace, there are only 3 houses, and
It's not a private street, it's a public street.
it's a public road, but it is, the neighborhood itself is, there's no reason, it's not a through neighborhood, there's no reason to go down there. There's no reason to
Way out
travel
of it,
unless
except to
you're,
go out of it around the other way.
right, so no one goes down there unless they're going to a house on
Right.
South Hill Street or Platte Terrace. And every home on South Hill Street and Platte Terrace has an in-ground swimming pool. Proposed pool is located in the architectural rear yard where the property is heavily vegetative screened by hollies and privet. Nearest property to the west of the subject property is 50 feet across Platte Terrace, and the proposed pool is proposed to be located 72.4 feet from the nearest property from the front yard setback. Both side yard setbacks are code conforming, and the rear yard setback is code conforming. So the nearest neighbor that can look from their property to see the privet hedge would be 72.4 feet from the pool. I do have winter views in the package. You cannot see the pool at any point of the year looking from the street. The proposed pool is further proportional in size to the size of the lot versus the larger pools that are on larger lots in other parts of the neighborhood, and I will go through that towards the end. The benefits for the applicant cannot be achieved by any method other than to request the area variance. There's not any code-conforming location for the applicant to place a swimming pool. Lot is burdened by having 2 front yards, and the front yard on South Hill Street and front yard on Platte Terrace, and the architectural rear yard line is 62.25 feet long, making it impossible to meet the 70-foot requirement without the benefit of an area variance. In the R40 zoning district, Southampton Village requires 70-foot setback, which it's impossible for us to meet unless the lot was 100 feet wide. So, I mean, there's just no way we can apply for any sort of swimming pool without the benefit of the variance. As far as the substantiality, the variance requested is a substantial, representing 68% relief from the code. However, the existing spa is located 32.25 feet from Platte Terrace, and the request is for a modest, an additional 10 feet is a modest expansion. Further, proposed pool expansion keeps the pool in the architectural rear yard. Requested setback is more conforming to the code than the existing setbacks for the stone patio, the 2-story frame dwelling, and the proposed pool side yard setback, rear yard setback, and lot coverage are all code conforming. Subject property is 8,973 square feet in size, and the R40 zoning district, which the property is located, village code requires the property to be 40,000 square feet. Therefore, the subject property is 77% smaller than what the village code requires. The requested variance relief, therefore, at 68% is proportional to the non-conforming size of the property, making it not substantial.
You say you're calling out a spa?
Pardon?
Calling out a spa, what's there now?
Spa's there, yep. That was what was ZBA required it to be called. So,
So it's like a plunge pool. But the only reason you got that was because it doesn't fit the definition. Code definition of a swimming pool.
Honestly, there was an Article 78, and I have the decision later on, and it doesn't state the reason anywhere in the public documents of why it was
It
granted.
doesn't fit the zoning code for a swimming pool, it's too small.
But it wasn't in the ZBA's decision, it wasn't written in any public document. The ZBA did not give a basis for why they made their decision. So, I mean, it is a spa that's in place, and,
Does it have heated and then aerated and everything?
yeah, I mean, I would call it a swimming pool, but it was called a spa in the decision, so I'm calling it a spa in my,
Not a pool, it doesn't fit the definition.
How deep is it?
4 foot, 5,
5 foot deep?
yeah, not quite that, but.
And it was under 100 feet,
Yeah,
100 square feet. That's why we,
it doesn't fit the definition of a swimming pool.
And it's a new house built there, correct?
Pardon?
It's a new house built there, correct?
The house built there now has been CO'd in 2018.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, so they created the hardship themselves. If they could have designed the house and probably had the pool in the side yard or the rear yard, but because of the way they designed the house, they've created a hardship now.
No, I disagree with that statement, and I'll explain why. Because if you look at the survey designing the house, I mean, right now it's set back 15.9 feet from the side yard line. The lot's only 62 feet long, so I mean, you would still need a variance for the house, so
there are a
13.7.
lot of variances for the house because there was a house there before.
I understand.
Entitled to a variance.
Yep, so you'd still need the variances for the house. And then, I don't know how you would be able to design the house while still meeting the side yard or rear yard setback of 20 feet. I mean, either way, any way it's designed, you would need a variance.
I'm not sure of that. You're saying that, but we have no proof of that.
Okay, I mean, you could build a house that's maybe 10 feet wide, but
15 feet wide or whatever, or an L-shaped house, and, you know, there's a lot of options here that they could have done,
they
but they
could,
didn't explore. They just built the house and then asked us to give us a variance for the pool they wanted.
and the variance for the spa was granted,
Yeah.
and it stayed within the setbacks.
Because
So
on
now
our
we're,
code, it doesn't specify as a pool.
okay, so the spa is there, we're requesting a variance to remove the spa and put a pool.
Yeah.
And I'm laying out the reasons why, and as far as it meets all the legal standards. I mean, this meets every single legal standard written in your code. It is in line with all of your existing pool variance approvals. And until 71 Walnut Street, I'm not aware of you ever denying a pool variance other than from my client several years ago.
Well, do you want to Roscoe Drive, it was long thought out until they changed the house design
Elm Street?
to get a pool in.
Roscoe Drive wasn't denied. Roscoe Drive, they voluntarily changed the house, but it
They
wasn't.
hadn't built the house yet like
But
this one.
there's
It
no
was an
formal
empty
denial
site
written in your record. There's no formal denial written in your record. There was never a decision written.
because they changed everything so they could get it accepted. They
Elm,
knew it was going nowhere, so they changed everything.
there's one on Elm Street, I'm sure.
I looked through your files. I couldn't find any, not that were written as denials.
We didn't deny it.
Some people just withdraw.
They
get
knew
the-
where it was going, so they withdrew it and redesigned the house.
Fine,
so
but
they
it's
could
not,
put a pool.
then it's not a denial.
Fine.
If it's
not a
withdrawn, I
denial.
It
mean,
was going to be a denial.
Don't bring a towel, though.
it's your opinion, but swimming pools are permitted on, it's a permitted use on residential lots, and the lot is developed with an existing spa. Proposed pool is an in-ground pool to replace the spa. The physical and environmental condition of the property and neighborhood will remain unchanged by the granting of this variance because the proposed pool will be hidden from the street by vegetative screening. There are pictures attached, we'll go through those later. And the size of the pool and side yard setbacks for the pool conform to Southampton Village Code. The applicant's approval and landscape plan will remain in place, and the pool will not be visible from the street or neighboring properties. The applicant will maintain a code-conforming pool safety fence that is not visible from the street. The proposed variance is considered to be a Type 2 action under SECRET, and Type 2 actions statutorily do not have a significant adverse impact upon the environment. Has the difficulty been self-created? No. The creation of the R40 zoning district and required front yard setback made the parcel pre-existing non-conforming size, and that is what created the,
You can see what's there now, whether you call it a spa or a plunge pool. You can see it right from the street very easily. You can see it from across the street.
okay, so
Unless they're going to improve the screening to a great deal. We were told that the last time.
the screening was improved. I mean, everything that was on that landscape plan was
See
put
that
in.
very easily.
Polys were put in. I mean, everything on the
You have to
landscape
look closely,
plan.
just glance as you drive by, and there it is.
I have pictures. The pictures, you don't see the pool looking at the pictures. I don't quite understand the statement.
I was in the neighborhood just yesterday.
We'll go over driving through, we'll get to the pictures later. But, I mean, everything on the approved landscape plan was planted, everything, and it's there as it is today, and it is maintained. Past ZBA decisions attached, we have 14, I just added the 15th decision granting variance relief for swimming pools on corner lots. ZBA has regularly granted these variances and through multiple zoning districts, including lots of similar size and lots in the R40 zoning district. The benefit to the property owner is substantial, and the vanity of the grants will grant her she'll be able to swim in a pool as opposed to a spa, which you can just sit in, and it gives greater value to the house.
Most of the cases that you cited are quite old.
Not all of them.
We try to learn from our experiences.
And, I mean, James Gleason was just granted last
I
year,
know, I
several
said
months ago.
most of them are quite old.
But of the variances that you've cited,
Okay.
are there any in this century that were 68% variances?
68% variance relief in this century.
Or is there anything close to 68%? I understand we've granted variances.
I'll write you a letter. I don't know that number off the top of my head, but I will look it and write a letter to it. But I do have, as supporting the benefit to my client, a letter from Richie Howe.
That's the real estate agent?
That's the real estate agent, saying that, I mean, obviously, I'm not trying to hide that the house was marketed for sale, that my client did trying to sell it. And every potential buyer did say that they wanted a full-size swimming pool, they didn't want to buy a house with a spa. It does go through the numerous open houses, the numerous showings, the numerous price reductions. And to date, they still haven't been able to get an offer on the house or sell the house. Everyone who wants to look at it wants to.
Lower the price.
It has been lowered. It's been lowered numerous times. The other thing I'll say, it's been a vacant, empty house for the last year and a half, 2 years. So, I mean, the benefit to the village would be that a family would buy the house, a family would live there. Right now, you have a vacant house that's depressing the value of the neighborhoods. And that's a substantial harm to the village, it's a substantial harm to my client. Now, let's get to the old variances. James Gleason, 128 Halsey Street. 0.23 acres, zoning board of appeals approved swimming pool set 10 feet by 23.5 feet setback from 35.6 feet off the property line. Board cites privet hedge as a mitigating factor, something which my client has. Non-conforming front yard setback will not negatively affect the character of the neighborhood. And the board states that 10-foot wide pool is the bare minimum, which is what my client is requesting, a 10-foot wide pool. A bare minimum practical pool, and that a 20-foot setback from the neighboring property will not affect any of the neighbors, which is what my client is also meeting. So we're meeting the same standards in the Gleason decision.
But could you just go over how far from the front yard were you there?
Gleason's 35 feet approximately.
And what was the zoning?
R 12.5.
I just want to know what the degree of variance was in that
12.5?
case.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know those off the top of my head.
Not less than 68, I would think.
Anthony
It
Albert.
would have been 40 feet, I believe.
It'd be 40 feet, right?
Correct.
So the pool was how far back?
35,
It was 35 instead of 40.
yes.
Okay. Now that's my point to you. 35 out of 40 to me is different than 22 instead of 70.
Yes, but.
So yes, we've tried to show some flexibility with some pools in the village when the variance seemed minor. This
But-
doesn't seem minor.
Well, the other thing is, though, I mean, this house wouldn't even be a code-conforming lot size in a 12.5 zoning district. It's just a rare lot that was zoned, it was built prior to zoning, it doesn't conform to any, I mean, the only zoning district in the village that this would conform to is the R7.5 zoning district. So, I mean, it just kind of randomly got stuck there. It's not my client's fault that it was stuck there, not the village's fault. So when you go with the proportion to the size of the property, the substantiality is proportional to the non-conforming size of the lot.
Well, when the client bought the property, they had to know the zoning restrictions and what this property was in comparison with other properties.
I'm not arguing that they didn't know the zoning code when they bought the property. I'm arguing that under the factors which the ZBA uses to approve area variances, this application checks every single box as far as an
But
approval.
it doesn't, because one of them is whether or not it's a substantial variance.
No, it's not.
But you can't argue that it's not a substantial variance when it's a 22-foot setback out of 70 feet. That's a 68% variance. That, by definition, is substantial.
Well, it's proportional to the size of the property.
Yes, but not to the zoning district. That's not how zoning is working in the village. We have zoning districts.
We get
You're
this
in an
ar-
R40 zoning
We
district.
get this argument all the time. People will buy a piece of property or invest in a piece of property, they'll build a house, and they say, okay, we don't have room for approval, let's build a house, and we'll go in and say it's a hardship afterwards, and we'll get a variance to do the pool, rather than coming in when they're building the house and taking care of it from the beginning. So it's like, we're asked to put a Band-Aid on your client's.
Well, she has the pool. I mean, there is a spa there. She's applying for a modest expansion of an existing spa. So, no, that's already, I mean,
But the spa was an example of this board trying to accommodate your client and being flexible. And then you're saying, okay, well, thank you for your flexibility,
no, I'm not saying that.
but
I'm
we'd
not-
like to
Well,
come
that's
back.
how we
and-
read it.
That's
And as
from our
for financial
perspective.
harm, presumably your client paid less for the property and that you couldn't build a pool on it.
I have no idea. That I
Doesn't
don't.
it make sense to you, though, that,
But do you have any facts to support that? I don't have.
I don't
a
have
fact.
any facts.
I don't have any basis to make that assumption. So, I mean, I have the letter saying that no one will buy the house.
you can say the pool will enhance the value, so the absence of a pool won't diminish the value?
Yes. That's
Well,
what
it
I'm
did
arguing.
diminish it when they bought the property.
I don't follow
There was
you.
no pool there before. Maybe they paid too much for the property. But, you know, what was paid for it, and what they're gonna win or lose or not, that's not our concern, really. I
What's the
don't want to
har- I
sound
mean-
uncaring, but
I
the
understand.
money is not our concern.
I understand that, but, I mean, what I'm arguing is that there's no harm to the village, and I don't have any facts in front of me, I haven't seen any facts presented that there is a harm to the
But we
village by
should have
granting
a
this.
lot of letters from a lot of neighbors.
Not kidding.
I haven't seen one, no letters on this application.
We've heard this 3 times, this case.
Hold it up.
The third time I've heard this case, we got loads of letters from the neighbors.
What's this? What date is this? This 4 people signed something somewhere around.
Yeah, it's around.
Part of this file, and
Heck, the man was here at the
Well,
last
it is
meeting.
now on December 3rd, 2019, so there's 4 people that signed this. Subsequent to December 3rd, 2019, Feld, Hackett, Lipman, and Dye.
I mean, I don't have a copy of it, they didn't bother to disclose it.
And they did this the last time, too, the same neighbors.
I think there was 7 last time. Would you like a copy of this?
Sure, I would.
You can point out how they have pools, probably.
I don't think we got any letters in support.
What? No. We haven't had any letters of support, none.
Right, but what does that have to do with the area variance standards letter from the neighbor? I mean, it goes to the harm to the neighborhood versus the benefit to my client. I mean, the benefit is substantial, I have plenty of evidence to prove that. What I don't have is the harm, and if you look at the neighborhood, we'll go to the tax map.
These people are arguing that there is harm because it's only .21 of an acre and it's too small.
But .21 of an acre, I mean, the size of the pool meets the, I mean, the house, the building, it meets the GFA, it meets the lot coverage.
Percentage of variance, as Mark just explained.
Okay, I mean, no, I'm answering Mr. Divany's questions about the size of the property.
5 feet off instead of, what,
Right, I'm-
58 feet off
I'm gonna
is a
answer
big
the
difference.
question first. I mean, as for the size of the pool conforms to the code. Every code that my client was able to meet, she did meet. As far as if you look at the neighborhood, and the other thing that distinguishes this from the other variances in our favor, is that the only person, this person here, their house doesn't even have to drive past the pool to go to their house. None of these other houses have to drive past the pool. Only lot 10 has to drive past the pool. That's only one person that's even affected by the pool that can maybe see it sometimes in the winter when it's closed. So, I mean, this is something that distinguishes it from all other variances granted, and that's less of a relief, just because nobody has to drive past it, other than one house. And that's something that's not, every other variance granted, multiple people have to drive past it. They're on through roads.
One of the reasons that we don't like to grant variances for pool in the front yard is because of the activity level, the chairs, the towels, the barbecues, everything that is associated with the pool. It's not just a square hole in the ground with the water, it's all the activities now that's taking place in the front yard, and I think that's what the neighbors find objectionable.
Right, but we meet the conforming setbacks for their yard. So, I mean, where the pool is now and there is a pool there, nothing changes for them. I mean, the house is a 5-bedroom house, it exists. I mean, the intensity doesn't change, the number of people in the house doesn't change. The amount of entertaining space, we're removing a patio where there's entertaining and replacing it with a pool, so that doesn't change. So, I mean, granting the variance, A, there's no precedent just because of the unique nature of the neighborhood. It's less non-conforming than other variances the board has granted in the past. And the intensity of the use is already there. The number of bedrooms isn't being increased. It can't be increased because there's no, we've already used the GFA requirements, so the use is the same. And we're not applying for a use variance. I mean, granting the pool allows my client to sell the house and nothing changes for the village, other than that maybe a nice family can move in and become a resident. I mean, right now you have an empty house. So, I mean, I don't see any harm. I mean, as far as the neighbors, and we'll go through their pools next, they all have huge pools, most of them. And they're all code conforming, and then a bigger pool is characteristic of the neighborhood. And if we go to the aerial, which I have, go to the aerial. Here's the pictures I had before. I mean, I understand they're pictures, and but those are the pictures. You can't see the pool in the pictures. If you look at the aerial, you look at the size of the neighbor's pool, this neighbor's pool, that neighbor's pool, that neighbor's pool, and then the size of this pool when it was being built. Just happened to randomly do when they took the picture on the aerial. I mean, this pool looks out of character with the neighborhood. Here's this one, here's that one. I mean, so having a little bit larger pool is characteristic of the neighborhood and characteristic of the village.
It looks out of character with the neighborhood?
The way it is now,
Yours?
the way it exists, yes.
What's there now is out of character with the neighborhood.
Right, proportional to other swimming pools in the neighborhood.
So we're gonna make it bigger.
That'll make it more
It'll really be out of character with the
that'll make it more characteristic of the neighborhood.
neighborhood. You lost me with that logic.
Look at the size and look how small this one is compared to these. I mean, it's not part of the area variance standards, but it is part of
It's
the
not a
character.
pool right now. According to the village code, it's not a pool, like I said before.
We're applying for a pool.
I know it is.
It's not a
Pool is
now.
more, I mean, there are, if you look at the other, if you want to go with the spa, if you look at the other pools in the neighborhood, the only spas, they're all accessory to swimming pools. So having a spa stand alone is out of character with the neighborhood.
I didn't think they should have gotten that one at the time, but they did. Of course, it wasn't a pool.
Like I said, I don't know what the rationale was. It wasn't written in your decision, and I can't speak to what's not written. It's not part of the minutes. It's not part of any public record. So I can't speak to what your rationale was.
They got it because it wasn't a pool according to village code. That's why they got it. If it was a pool, they wouldn't have gotten
We
it.
did say that it wasn't within the definition of a pool.
You know, that's clear.
Apparently
It's
it's
not
a
a pool.
starter.
What's there is not a pool.
Well,
But that's not, I'm not arguing that what's there is not a pool. I'm arguing that my client is entitled to meet the area variance standards to get a swimming pool.
Right.
If you go with Anthony Albansi, 64 Armont Street, and these are all bigger lots. I will get to the smaller lots that are the same size as my clients. Zoning Board of Appeals granted variance relief for a swimming pool with a front yard setback of 33.8 feet. Variance relief granted because the shape of the lot had limited depth, which my client does have, and had limited depth and from the street to the rear yard setback line. Michael Ianiu, who used up his lot coverage mostly on he has a spa, but he used up the lot coverage on a garage and a house. Variance relief for 34.8 feet. That was a hot tub / spa from Burnett Street based on the fact that the proposed hot tub is set back further from the street than the house.
It was 34 out of how many feet? What was the setback?
Like I said, I will get you the information, but I don't.
I mean, I've read your decisions. I mean, I read what you submit. Okay, I didn't find anything that requested a variance as substantial. Nothing close to 68%. There was one case that was, in the last century.
Yeah.
But so I understand that you're going through these, but I think you're going to find that most of these were minor variances from the required setback, the ones that you're citing right now. So as you're citing them, just, if you could, just let me know, how far is the pool, from the front yard, and what was required? Because I think that's going to,
have
be
it off. I have
significant.
to-
But
I
it's
have
in
to
the
look it up.
decisions that you're reading.
You want me to read the whole decision?
No, just the part where it says,
already read
if
it.
it's 33 feet, what was required? Because I think it was 33 out of 40, whereas this is 22 feet where 70 is required.
Have you looked at the property that's on Almond Street?
I'm familiar with, I've seen the aerials.
Albany's, it's an entirely different type of property than this property.
But Armand Street, and
Longer. It goes down Almond Street forever. Very long piece of property.
right, but it's also a street that people drive past. That's the difference between it.
And you can't see anything. You cannot see the pool at any time of year.
mean-
December or June, you can't see the pool.
And my client is happy, if you want more screening, she's happy to put it up and will meet that
It's a much
criteria.
larger piece of property.
But we're not asking for a variance relief from the size of the property, we're asking variance relief from the setback.
Larger properties can support pools. Small properties have a difficult time trying to support pools.
That's not what your code says. Your code, my client meets the size of the swimming pool for the code. I know you keep saying that, and I keep telling you the same thing for your code.
Well, you asked when you first came up, what did we do with the other one, right?
I did, and I'm going to address that later.
And that's practically the same size as this one,
Well,
maybe even a little deeper.
that's actually bigger than this one.
Not much, not much.
Yeah, that's 12 by 30, this one's 10 by 20,
I'm
so.
not talking about the pool, I'm talking about the property.
I don't have that.
It's about the same size as this property.
Okay. But the big difference between that property and this one is that that's a highly traveled neighborhood. People walk there, they go past the house, they walk to the school, they walk to town. This is a lightly traveled neighborhood, so it's a completely different application. And I will review your decision and put that in writing, write a letter as to it.
All right,
You
well,
want a copy of that to see?
Sure, yeah. Here. If you keep going through the decisions, you had James Gleason just approved last year. You do have the one that I just handed up now, that was an as-built pool, the guy built the pool illegally, as far as I can tell, and then you ended up approving the decision, even though he did have more conforming setbacks that he could have met.
which one is that you're talking about?
Was, the one I just handed up. Evan Fragas, 231 Halsey Street. Thank you. And if you go to the survey, which I do have, so that was 32 feet from West Prospect, and he did have options, he could have turned the pool. So, we're not asking for anything more than what he asked for. If you go with Loretta Diamond Margardinen, ZBA granted an as-built swimming pool with a side yard setback of, it's not a front yard, but it was an as-built that was built without permits. And it was granted, and they cited a financial hardship as reasoning for granting the decision, and that's similar to what my client is requesting. So, as far as ZBA decision number 1246547 Meadow Lane, I know it's an older one, but most of the R40 zoning district decisions that were applied for were older, because most R40 zoning lots are actually closer to 40,000 square feet, and they're not corner lots, and they can meet the setback, which is, my client's problem is that she's a corner lot. We can't meet the setback, it's impossible. So the ZBA and ZBA decision number 1246, ZBA approved a swimming pool with a front yard setback of 18 feet, so this is more non-conforming than my client's setback. Approval was based on the pool being set back further from the street than the existing house, which again, is a
Which one's
consistent
this?
standard. This is 1989.
No, which one?
Oh, 1246.
What's the name on it?
All I know is the address 547 Meadow Lane. There was nothing actually, a name written on the decision. Approval was based on the pool being set back further from the street than the existing house, which is the standard that the ZBA has always been consistent with, and that my client does continue to meet. And the approval was based on then the existing house and the proximity of the applicant's property to wetlands. And my client doesn't have wetlands, but she is further setback than the existing house. Obviously, the other decision in my client's neighborhood, Margaret Horn, ZBA decision 875, 55 Captain's Neck Lane. Zoning Board of Appeals granted variance relief for a non-conforming front yard setback 34.7 feet. So this is,
In 1982, that was the one that was closest to this case.
right, but it's also the only other corner lot that can't conform. I mean, if you look at the other corner lot, it's a large estate, it's 3.5, I think it's 3 acres. So they were able to conform to the 70-foot setback. So it's not that my,
Which one was 3 acres?
You know what's going to happen
it's on the
here?
corner of Captain's Neck and South.
They wanted a pool, you couldn't have a pool. So we said, well, you can have a spa, so it's not a pool. So now that we're going to, we approve this, we're going to give them 10 by 20 pool, and then they're going to sell the house. Then the new people are going to come in, they say, well, we can't sell lots in 10 by 20 pool. We want a variance for a 32-foot pool. This thing's never ending.
I can answer the question, if that's a question. The answer is, once this pool is built, the lot coverage is pretty much maxed out. So if they were to apply for a bit larger swimming pool, then they would need extra variance relief, which I don't think they're entitled to in that case, because they don't meet any
Well,
standards.
that's what you want now.
No, the lot coverage isn't maxed out now. They left the lot coverage for the swimming pool, which eventually ended up getting smaller. So,
The problem we're having is that this was here before us before. We've heard these arguments.
Yep.
We made a decision that attempted to accommodate, you by providing the spa. You went, left, built the spa, okay, and now coming back, what is this, a year or so later? 2 years later, and saying, thanks for that variance, however, we need to extend that variance. And we've already heard the arguments that you're making. We've already looked at the variances that we've granted in the past. We're trying to be as consistent as possible. You're asking for a substantial variance, but you're not changing any facts. You're just making the same arguments.
The only fact that I'm changing is that the variance for James Gleason was approved, and then the other fact is that they can't sell the house for what's the market value. I mean, that's the,
Well, that's the problem, is that you've calculated the market value incorrectly.
And it's not up to us to decide on, how do we know you want to sell the house? You get a variance because you want to live in the house. Selling the house has no bearing, really.
no, but that's the harm to my client. I mean, the variance relief is harm to the client versus detriment to the village. I mean, what there isn't, and what I couldn't find, and then believe me, I tried to find it so I could refute it, is any harm to the village. I mean,
But you weren't even aware of the neighbor's letter in opposition,
I'll
and
read
that's
the-
in the file. So you said you couldn't find any harm, but it's not hard to find. It's in the file. There were, and at our last hearings, okay, there were numerous neighbors who came in and objected. And they testified as to the harm to them.
But they meet the setback to them, so by law, there is no harm because they are a code-conforming distance from their houses.
I'm not sure I understood that.
Well, I mean, look at the neighbor. I mean, lot 50, lot 25, we meet the setback from lot 50 and lot 25. Lot 23, that is behind, I mean, they can't look through my client's house to see the swimming pool. Lot 11, the house is here, the pool's back here, so they still can't see the pool from their house. It'd be an angle, they'd have to look through the house to see it. The only person that might be able to see it is lot 10, and they haven't, as far as I know, it's any objection. Lot 9, they'd have to look at an angle through the corner. I mean, it's over 100 feet from my client's house. So, I mean, even if they object, my client meets.
But again,
And I'll respond to their...
those arguments were made 2 years ago. We understand what you're saying. It's the same thing we heard 2 years ago. It's not a change in facts. The one fact that you say may have changed is that you tried to sell the house with the spa and you weren't as successful as you had hoped.
Are there any houses in Southampton that have a pool and aren't selling?
Of course. I mean, it's...
But that's not the argument. I mean, the argument is that there's a benefit to my client, which, I mean, you're not saying that there's no benefit to my client. So I have the benefit, and then there is no detriment to the village. I mean, I'm not arguing that the value to the house is X and should be Y. I'm arguing that there's a benefit, and there's no there's no evidence that it's not a benefit. I mean,
Okay,
so,
I think we've heard your argument. Mind if I ask if there's anybody on the floor who'd like to speak?
Well, I'd like to say one thing, if you were in the neighborhood,
There's a same
Okay,
place.
come on up.
if you were in the neighborhood and one of your grievances is that you can see the pool from Platt Street. My neighbor directly to the east, if you coming in on South Hill, you can see his pool the entire length of his property. So I don't understand why, and I have
He conforms.
barely conforms, yeah.
Oh, so that's-
You can also see on the corner of
He's screened, but it doesn't have to be invisible.
Captain's Neck and South Hill. You can also see that pool, which is right there, does not conform, which is even closer to the road than this would be. Right on the corner of Captain's Neck and South Hill.
okay.
It's,
Yeah.
and you can really see that right, it's right from the road.
Warren Haman's house.
It's, she's a broker.
Are you the owner of the house?
I don't know the owner's name, I know the house.
No, I mean, this
Who are you?
property.
Is it on here?
No, she.
Could you state your name and
Could you introduce
relation to
yourself,
the
please?
application?
Oh, pardon me?
Your name and what your,
My name's Dawn
Relationship
Barnard,
is-
and I'm the owner of the house.
Okay,
Sorry
thank you.
about that. Sorry about that. Yes, so when I bought the house, and I did go to the building department, and one of my concern was that I wouldn't be able to get a pool. And they said, well, I said, because of the two front yards. And they said, well, and again, this is just the building department person said, well, it's been granted numerous times. I don't think you will have a problem. And then when we built the house, I wanted to stay completely, when you said, why didn't I change the size or this,
Well, then, from that point again, you're going for the variance at that point.
well, what I tried to do is keep it as, build a very nice, simple house, stay within the exact footprint of the existing house. I didn't go for any variances, or I could have even gone bigger, but I decided
Well,
to
you got
build a
some
nice,
variances at
small
the time for
house.
the house. You were entitled to those.
Pardon me?
You were entitled to the variances you got for the house.
Right.
Because if the previous house had been rebuilt there, they would have needed variances too.
Right, but I stayed within the footprint of the existing.
I don't know whether you recall when the application first came out, there were about 8 variances listed on it.
I stayed
Which
within the footprint.
were satisfied because you
Yeah.
had a previous house there that would have met the same variances.
The same, exactly, exactly. Look, it's a non-conforming lot. It's, nobody wants to buy a house without a pool in Southampton. So it will sit empty.
The other thing I'll say is,
No, I'd like
It's a really
I'd like to hear
crazy-
from this gentleman back there, please.
Okay, I am authorized to speak for neighbors on the north, south, east, and
You have
west.
to tell us your
sir,
name, sir.
step up to the table.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm authorized
and
to speak for the neighbors, Andrew Lippman, 64 South Hill Street.
One of the signers.
Yes,
And you're a neighbor.
yes. And I'm authorized to speak for neighbors in north, south, east, and west. The developer bought this house for $1.4 million because it was on a .21 acre lot that was a corner, and anybody knew that it had limited entitlements. They got 4 variances, north, south, east, and west, to build this house and build higher as well. This is now depending on how you count it, 3rd or 4th time that they've requested this. When they brought the Article 78 hearing against the village, they had an affidavit from Harold Grant that said, if you allow us to put this, what we're now calling the spa, in there, that will add $250,000 to the value of the property. That's in the file, you can see it. So, as far as I'm concerned, this is all of, the house was purchased for about half of the cheapest house on the street at the time. And I know it cost the cheapest house at the street was mine, other than that one. So the price reflected the limited development potential of this piece of property.
What are your fears if the pool goes in?
Well, if you look in the file, I think it was the village attorney, in his opinion, after the Article 78, talked about the noise, and it's actually in, I believe I quoted it in my letter. The village attorney himself talked about what the negative effects would be.
May I respond?
You may respond.
As far as noise goes, we're not applying for a use variance, we're not changing the use, we're applying for an area variance. So pools are a code-conforming use by village code, therefore the noise associated with pools is considered acceptable by the village code. As far as redesigning the house is only 23 feet wide as it is. So I'll say again, it would have been impossible for us to redesign the house unless you put like a 1 foot or 2 foot deck over here, which doesn't make sense, and then try to slide the pool in behind it. But then I don't know how you get any space between the pool and the house. So maybe you can redesign something that then the pool slams right into the house.
No, there's nothing else.
And I will get a letter from an
Maybe.
architect saying it's impossible to redesign.
I think we know that.
Okay, so you agree that it would have been impossible to
No,
redesign?
No, we don't agree to that. We agree to what you have now.
The other thing I'll say, and we did look at a not code conform, I can't do code conform. In the alternative, we could take the pool and then expand it closer to the house. It would still need variance or relief, but it is something we could do and we wouldn't be changing the setback. That's kind of something you
I
guys.
told you, before, the only reason you got the setback because it's not a pool. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten it.
There's nothing written. I mean, I understand you're telling me that now, but there's nothing in writing that says that.
If you'd been here during those hearings, I think you would have gotten our...
And it wasn't written in your decision. And if you read the decision that was written, I didn't really understand. I did read it numerous times. It mostly cites noise as a factor with the pool. And then after
Noise
you
is
wrote
always
that,
a factor.
right, but after you write in the decision, then you overturned what you wrote in the decision later on. So I don't think it applies.
We did when we were informed that it's not a pool. So we weren't deciding on a pool. We had- if it had
That
been a pool at that
information was
time, we would've
available
gone
before
through.
you, that information was always available.
Mr.
Our
Lippman,
attorney informs us of a lot of things that we're not always aware of.
do all of the neighbors that signed have pools?
Yes, but they also have meaningfully larger lots. And the house that was built here, by the way, is at least twice the square footage of the previous house that was there.
Because it was a one-story house.
No, it was one,
Yes,
it
sure,
was not.
they did, it had a little bedroom up top.
I
did.
looked at
had
it
a
for
second
22
story.
years.
Please address the board.
That is true,
Do
but
you
that,
find it, it's a very pretty house.
yeah, I mean, the house itself is code conforming in size. It was built legally with variances, and if you look at the size, I mean, all the other pools are over twice the size of what I'm even proposing, what we're proposing. And like I said, we are offering not a code conforming, we are offering to keep the existing setback, and we'll expand north to south. And then the substantiality argument goes away because we're keeping the same variance relief that's for substantiality.
Have room to expand to the south and north? South and east?
No, I have room to expand I have room to expand to the south,
To the north,
to the north.
to the north.
It gets closer to the house. I don't think it makes any sense,
Then
but
you'd have to turn the pool the other way. Pool would have to be turned north and south rather than east and west.
well, I mean, it's a square basically now, so it's not really,
Right, it would come.
That's going to go.
yeah, I mean,
So it would come right up to the
it would come to the step.
terrace.
I don't think it makes sense architecturally. I don't,
Safety factor there. Comes right up to the step.
I mean, there's code conforming ways to mitigate that. I mean, that would be a building department issue. We just build a pool fence. I mean, that's not an issue. But, I mean, it would satisfy what you're saying is you don't want to grant a more substantial variance that would satisfy that argument. And the substantiality would remain unchanged.
We're hold this open or close it?
Is there any more information that,
Do you want me to give you a site plan that shows the pool remaining unchanged? The setbacks remaining unchanged with a bigger pool?
I don't need to see it, no.
I don't know about that. I don't know if that's relevant.
Well, what Mr. Grunwald's been telling me is that his biggest concern is the substantiality.
Okay.
So I am saying that I,
Hot tub to here, so what you're saying, you build a pool like that, maybe reconfigure the deck a little bit, so it doesn't get any closer than the 10-foot one is now. But it's still a
What we're pool.
missing.
missing, I understand, that, and I did say, because I wanted to be consistent with precedent.
Yep.
So I looked at all the cases that you submitted, and I thought that in this case, you're far more substantial than the other cases that you submitted, as far as the degree of variance. But when we were working on this case a couple of years ago, it was emphasized to us that we were not granting a variance for a pool because it was under 100 square feet. That in fact, this by definition under the code was not going to be a pool. So we're very concerned about, the entire village and what other applications will come before us, which will ask for the same thing. So that's why expanding the pool doesn't help a great deal, because
It's not a pool now.
by definition a pool right
so
now.
what you need me to do is do an analysis of the R40 zoning district and prove to you that there are no other lots that are corner lots that are this size in the R40 zoning district that will or can ask for this relief. Yeah, I'm willing to do that.
You could try it, and you could try to diminish the,
Because,
reconfigure it a bit, too.
well, the only real option I have is to bring it closer to the deck. And
You can reconfigure the deck, too.
Right, but
Still
I'm
won't change how far it is from the front yard.
You're saying it's a spa,
What
not
they
a
do.
pool, so even
Right,
if
they
you
go this way.
configure it and bring it closer to the house, you don't want to do that because it will
It'll be too close to the south.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's the
Because
problem.
to
So, I guess you're
accommodate
saying- yeah.
some type of water element, it was emphasized to us that if it was under 100 square feet,
Right.
it wouldn't be a pool.
But I don't see how there's a distinction into how the village is harmed by the granting of the variance.
Right.
Because there is no harm. I'll go through the district and I'm fairly certain I'll find out that almost all the houses in the R40 zoning district already have pools, and that there are no other lots this size in the R40 zoning district, or corner lots this size. So it's unique in a way that benefits my client, but it's less non-conforming than variances that have been granted in the past. And I understand there are older variances, but people developed, it's an older village, a lot of lots in the village were originally developed in prior years. Some of the 20s, 80s, 70s, 1800s. And so, that's when people were applying for variances. I got one on Toilsome, I think they're 8 feet from the property line. It's easier for me to use my cheat sheet than it is to go through the various decisions while I'm in front of you. Toilsome, 226 Toilsome Lane, 8 feet from 40 feet. That's more than the variance relief that my client is requesting as far as a percentage.
What year was that granted?
It was in 1977. I understand this, but a lot of these properties were all developed back then, so that's when they applied for the
50
relief.
years ago.
Right,
The
but that
village was
pool's still,
different 50 years
It's
ago.
still an
There were a lot
entity.
less houses.
but it's still a code-conforming use. That doesn't really affect it doesn't affect what I'm applying for. If the village board was to say you can't have pools on a lot this size, then the size of the lot would be up for debate, but they don't, my lot size is conforming to the size of the pool.
Do you think some of the animus from the neighbors is connected to the size of the house you built?
I had no idea, and
Was there any objections to the house they
really did try to
built?
stay in the
Sure.
footprint.
We have appeared here 3 times before.
For the house?
Yes.
So is this,
This
I was never
keeps
here-
going on and
I was never here
on.
for the house.
No, what he's saying is not for the pool, but for the house itself. the
Yes,
structure of the house.
we did. Eric Bregman was our lawyer at the time,
But
representing all 4 neighbors.
once again, the size of the house
Yeah.
is code conforming,
It's code conforming.
and the height of the house is code conforming. The
It's all code
gross floor area code conforms, the number of bedrooms code conforms.
No, you're fine, you're that, well, we don't have to, I mean,
Yeah.
the house is there, it's great.
So that's why I
know
think the
about the house.
neighbors are picking on the
You got the house because
I
there was a
think
house
that
there before.
happens sometimes, that's why I asked the question.
So-
Right.
And I mean, as far
I
as,
think it's a,
yeah, I mean, I'll say it again, there is no effect on the pool and the neighbors, and it doesn't really have any bearing on the analysis of the area variance standard. That's the reality of the most of the neighbors' comments. I will go through the letter, I will respond in writing, and I will give you the alternative plan, and I will go through the R40 zoning district, and
So you
Yeah, I
want us
don't
to
know
hold
that
this
that
open?
solves the
So-
issue of not creating a bad precedent, because it's still a 68% variance, and any applicant who would come forward would just say, you know, I want a pool variance too, you just granted a 68% variance, regardless of whether it's R40 or not. So I'm not
But
sure, I understand
re-
what exercise you're going through, but I don't think it would be,
but regardless if you grant this or not, it doesn't create any new precedent, because they're coming and doing it anyway.
Sure it does.
Granting it, no, I don't see how granting it, and I have the analysis and the facts to prove it, creates any new precedent.
No, but I mean, if you give a 68% relief, everybody's going to come in there and want 60.
Well, most of them would have a code-conforming location. That's the difference between my client's property and other people who come in for relief. If there's no code-conforming rotation for permitted use on a property, you're entitled to variance relief. I mean, I would say she's entitled to a swimming pool, not a spa, because if you're telling me that there's no swimming pool on the property, then she's entitled to a variance to get a swimming pool. I mean, if there's no code-conforming location for the swimming pool.
that was what was previously argued.
I heard enough.
Yeah, so do I.
Okay, so you want to submit some more material, is that correct?
So we'll hold it open for all purposes?
Is that your request?
Yes.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. New cases, 3067, 80 White Street.
That's 3066. Is it 3066?
No, 3066 is adjourned.
Adjourned today.
He came in and huddled up.
I'm Nicholas Ali Monastiano, the owner of 80 White Street, requesting to change the zoning to residential. Yeah. I don't need anything.
You had a C of O?
I have, for some reason, I have a C of O for the pool. Did you own the property when that, or did you buy the pool?
No, I.
Did you put
I
the
built
pool
it.
in?
I built it.
You built the pool.
I built the whole property, yeah.
How in the world did you get a variance for this pool?
We didn't.
You just got a building permit.
It's from the
Oh, yeah.
beginning, when I applied for back in 2001.
Yeah,
It was on my survey. It's not something that
It
I,
was there
it
before.
was there.
no.
No, it wasn't there. He got it, he gave a survey with the pool on it, and he got it approved, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, they gave a building permit, whether somebody missed that.
Well,
I don't think they ever came before us.
no, they didn't. Somebody missed it. It's right there, though. He's got a permit.
And yeah,
So, yeah,
I mean, and a C of O. Yeah. Fine. You don't want to give it up, do you?
Been there for 15 years. Nobody's complained about it.
Okay. Well, as I expressed last time, I am impressed with the amount of parking that goes on in that area, that street. Negatively impressed, that is. So,
So if this becomes a house, there'll be less problems with parking in the street, because they have a lot of parking
Down below.
on site.
I'm not intending to change anything on the exterior of the building or the structures.
Right.
I'm sort of in favor of it.
I am
It is.
too. Gorgeous building, of course.
You're gonna take half the garage and turn that to a living space.
Well, there are two garages now,
Yeah.
so make one of
You're
them.
gonna take one.
Well, are there any questions from the board about changing the use? Or-
No, I mean, I think going to residential is probably in the positive direction.
That's what I think.
You see any hiccups, Dave, with the,
You talking to David?
No, I don't.
Yeah, no, one down, about 2 houses down to the to the east.
did we just approve that one?
That's a house.
That was zoned office district, and they wanted to put up a residence.
Right.
Yeah,
I think
And
we have enough
everything-
offices anyway, so.
too many offices.
And maybe
Yeah, a lot of offices.
next thing, we want, John Bennett's gonna wanna do something.
I already did.
I know.
What you do?
How'd that work out?
Not yet.
So, what do we need to ask of this gentleman? Anything else?
Well, the pool is there, we can't do anything about that, right?
No?
And it's in the back anyway.
Yeah. Everything's, I don't know what we got. GFA's okay, I guess. Parking's okay. How many bedrooms you got?
Well, I'm applying for 8.
8. And how many parking spaces you got?
Actually, 9.
And we only need 7.
Do we have GFA and lot coverage calculations? Does it comply with residential zoning?
We have,
Are there any 8 bedrooms in the house now?
No,
Is the septic up to
Office.
code for
no, I have to
8?
do a new septic. That's for sure.
That would have to be in the decision that.
If I have
does
more
that,
than
yeah.
3 bedrooms, that's why I want to apply high, because I have to change it anyway. So I probably only need 5 bedrooms. I'm going to have the house for myself,
Right.
but I want to apply high so that,
don't apply high, come in here straight.
So you're gonna end up going for health department for an oversized.
yeah, I have to.
Okay, so that should be in the decision.
What?
That he
Sep-
upgrades the septic system.
Yes. It should be.
Yeah, because he needs more septic
For
a
8
house than he
bedrooms.
does for
Yeah,
a bedroom
yeah.
for what he does with an office. You're not taking showers in an office.
Right.
But it was a spa, wasn't it?
And once you get
Hasn't it
above,
been used
once you
as a
get
spa?
above 4 and you get into
It's been a
5,
spa,
the
so how
size of
many
the septic
bathrooms are there
system
now?
increases too.
Yeah.
In the whole building, there are 4. But there are powder rooms too, yeah.
So there are 4 bathrooms in it now and a half bath, because it was a spa.
3 now.
It's had water. It's needed all that.
I can have 3 bedrooms the way that it is now, but that's very small.
Okay. So, anybody from the floor have anything to say about this? Yes, sir.
Hi, it's John Bennett. I'm just out of the zone of noticing, I think, of some properties that I own. But Nick's always been a fantastic neighbor. It's a gorgeous house. It's built with a lot of love. You can tell it's very unique. And I think it would be nice to have a house there. It's a residential neighborhood essentially, with the exception of the easterly part of the street. So, and for whatever it's worth.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Board? No? Want to close for decision, folks?
Yeah.
So we're closing for decision, David. We need a septic mentioned in the decision.
Okay.
Can I have a motion to close for decision?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And aye. Okay, next
you.
month, we'll have a decision.
We'll put in the decision what we want about the septic.
Yes,
Yeah.
I mentioned that to David.
Hour and a half late to dinner.
Yes.
I don't
Okay.
like these just prefer to go to bed either.
This is so late.
Lastly, 3068,
Okay.
Jeff Oxpaster.
All the teeth on the bottom have to come out.
Who's your dentist?
And then I'm going to do everything.
Who's your dentist? I'm gonna stay away from him.
Really?
Should I proceed?
Yes, sir, please.
My name is John Bennett, Bennett and Reed, 212 Windmill Lane, Southampton, New York, and I represent the applicant, JAF 160 Oxpaster Holdings, LLC. This has been in my client's ownership for quite some time, but you might remember it as it's the old Lloyd Smith house on Oxpaster Road. It's a 9.1 acre parcel. It's a big piece of property. It's located in the R120 zoning district, so, you know, more or less it could be further subdivided into about 3 parcels. It's on the south side of Oxpaster, east of Halsey Neck. We have an aerial photograph. It's a little bit blurry, but there's the main house. That's the old Lloyd Smith house and property. And then in the southeast corner is what we're here to talk to you about, which is it's a guest house on the top and primarily a garage below. This was been a prior application, and we put the variance grant in the record. But as a condition of the prior variance grant, this building, which was a separate standalone house, was required to be converted to a guest house, which is what it is now. So what we would like to do is to renovate the existing guest house and increase the floor area all within the building that is to be used as the guest house. And not only, by the way, I should have said beforehand, but both the builder, Peter Cole, and Daniel Butler, the architect, are here to answer any questions that you may have. So even though we're within the confines of the footprint of the existing building, on the 4 corners, the 4 walls of the existing building, why are we here? We're here because, as you can see on DD20 of Mr. Butler's plans, the existing first floor of this building is garage, primarily garage. And what we'd like to do is convert that to primarily a kitchen and dining area. And I think we're picking up a little bit of a habitable space also over here as a bathroom. I want to give you the numbers. The existing guest house has 210 square feet of habitable space on the first floor and 1,120 on the second floor. Second floor, right? Second floor plans, yeah, second floor. So
What was on the first floor?
on the first floor, it's not much. There's 210 square feet of habitable space on the first floor. That's shown existing foyer. Existing habitable is about 210 square feet of what we've considered habitable space. So the idea is to convert a large part of the first floor, which is currently garage, to dining and kitchen area. So since the board requires us to, since the village code requires even when you're converting to habitable space, even when you're in an existing, staying within the limits of the house, bless you, we have to come here and ask you to increase the habitable space. So what we would be proposing to add an additional 1,420 square feet within the existing first floor area of the guest house, thus increasing the habitable space within the existing structure by 106.7, is that what I have? 106.7%. Now, although the existing structure will not be expanded, the subject property is 3 times in excess of the minimum area required for zoning, so hopefully that's something that you can look at in terms of it being distinguishable. It's not going to really change anything to the character of the neighborhood because I'm not changing the structures whatsoever. I didn't see any negative, I could be surprised tonight, but I didn't see any negative letters in the file. The only one I was able to speak to today was the neighbor. I spoke with Tad Meyer, who's the attorney for the Donald Novick Trust, who didn't have any problem with the application, but it's only fair to point out that there's an intervening lot between that Novick Trust property and the subject property. So then the only thing that I would think that you would question is to say, well, 106% is more than 50%, but we do have, did we submit, is there a letter we have to submit? I just wanted to bring to your attention that Wombold case in which this board allowed more than 50% expansion of the habitable space on a property. It's a flag off of Great Plains, or it's a private road off of Great Plains, and the neighbor challenged your grant of a expansion of an existing guest house. It was more than double the size of the existing guest house. Actual physical expansion of a guest house by saying you have a 50% rule in your code, and in a decision that Rick DePetris wrote, which was then upheld by the Supreme Court and then the Appellate Division, Second Department. The courts agreed with your interpretation of saying, well, the village code may say 50%, but we have the power to do more underneath the New York State village law. Mr. Walsh was the objectant at the time, was trying to argue that the pre-existing non-conforming guest house in that Wambold case was a non-conforming use, and this board, you found in a decision which Rick wrote, but you approved, that it is in the nature of an area variance.
That was the application where the person who was objecting had just gotten variance from us that night for her property.
Oh, yeah,
She's
yeah.
standing there with the variance in her hand,
I
objecting
remember
to
that,
this.
yeah, I do, yeah. She objected to a lot of variances. She objected to variances for my client next door. I think I might have pointed out that her house had a couple of variances already.
Yeah, one was from wetlands, I think.
Yes, exactly.
She's
I remember
the one
that.
with the skinny dip.
I could never forget that.
Skinny dipper lady.
Holding in her hand, and I objected to this.
I've checked this. I do remember that.
Well, I'm taking it back from her.
Give me that damn thing. So, yeah, in that case, you allowed the expansion of a guest house. You allowed the actual physical expansion well beyond 50%. Because it made sense on that lot.
It was a family plot, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Donovan or something, some
I
Irish.
forget what it was, but.
One part of the family lived in the main house, and they wanted this for the other part.
Yes. And it's a private road off of Great Plains, I think. But this is not even any physical expansion of the four corners of the
Just the interior.
It's just the interior. So I don't think it's hopefully it wouldn't be an issue. Did you want to further explain just exactly what's going on?
Yeah, I'm Dan Butler, the architect. Thanks for staying so late for us tonight.
Yeah, no, it's really, I don't want to say simple, but it's 2,000 square foot footprint that we're basically taking some function that is up in the second floor. So there's already a kitchen, dining, and living space. The bedrooms are small, you know, you can argue, but they want to bring and make the first floor more functional, is basically the purpose of this. So basically, the footprint doesn't change on the first floor. We may change some windows, but that's an architecture review board issue. Second floor stays the same. It's just basically an interior alteration that we reconfigure some walls to make some space bigger. None of the exterior features on the second floor change. It's really just the kind of the ingress, egress, making the structure more usable for the client in her view. So.
How many square feet are on the property itself, the main house?
The main house? Oh, it's enormous.
I don't have that.
We'll get you that calculation.
No, I'm just, listen, I don't have any issue with it, I'm just.
It's a large, it's very
wondering,
large.
Is there a size limit on houses? Is it 18,000 square feet?
It's 18,000.
Are we bumping up?
The main house, I think, is 11,000.
Okay, so we're well below, okay. That was the only thing.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, it's deceiving because it's long, yeah.
Kind of twisted this way.
But we're not bumping up against, okay.
And there are already 2 garages on it, so we're getting rid of some garage space, but there's sufficient garages. There are 2 garages there already. So.
This property is now 9.1 acres, or it was 9.1?
No, it's 9.1 acres now.
Before it was
It
like
used to go
14 to
all the way
15.
to, yeah. There was,
It had the caretaker's house, which is now a private house.
it had the caretaker's house, which was, what they did was they took, that's now a wing of a much bigger house. I tried to argue that before the ARB one time. See, you let them just take this wing and made them triple the size of the house, but they said that was a mistake. But
I
yeah.
used to take his car back and forth from Southampton to Houston. and
Oh,
then we
Lloyd
moved to
Smith, yeah.
Palm
He
Beach.
was an
I took
oil
him.
guy, if I remember. Yeah.
Nice guy, very
Nice man, yeah. I know his grandson, by the
He
way.
was
is a nice
fond
man.
of hot dogs and beans at a Howard Johnson's. I picked him up in New York and said, "Isn't there a Howard Johnson's at exit 63?" I said, "Yeah, stop there, we're having lunch." It was always hot dogs and beans.
I've heard he was
Across from this very, very wealthy man, he's ordering hot dogs and beans.
I've heard he was a sweetheart of a guy, actually.
Oh, he was,
Yeah.
he was.
But he doesn't live there anymore. But he doesn't live there anymore.
No, not anymore. Doesn't live in Palm Beach either.
It might be sprinkled around.
Huh?
You might
It might be sprinkled
Might
around.
be sprinkled around.
I don't think, I'm not trying to be presumptuous, but I think it sort of speaks for itself.
I really liked him.
Okay, any chatter about this
No.
project? No? Close for decision, or? Can I get a motion to that effect?
Thanks a
I
million.
move we close this for decision.
Favor?
Aye.
And aye. Is there any further business?
No further
If
business.
not, I move to adjourn this meeting of February 27th, 2020.
So moved.
Second?
There.
All in favor?
I only